J Sai Deepak. And J Sai Deepak, this was totally against equity, against the basic tenet that everybody is equal before the eyes of law. One section of the society was made the perennial oppressor, the other section the perennial victim. I want to ask you, the cornerstone of these rules, was it just bad drafting, or was there appeasement that was cloaked in these UGC rules?
First thing, the statement that everybody is equal in the eyes of the law does not hold true or valid either in theory or in practice. Because if you have an SC/ST Atrocity Act in place, then the question of everybody being treated equally on the question of discrimination does not exist. Particularly when the court wanted certain safeguards imposed, which were legislated out subsequently in 2018, and the Supreme Court going on to actually endorse even those legislations which went against the safeguards imposed by the Supreme Court, tells you that the concept of equality does not exist either in paper or in reality. Two, in short, these regulations of decent which wanted to become better going to worse, which means the 2012 regulations were decent, but they had a lot of scope for work, including for building safeguards into them, apart from the question of implementation, resulting in petitions of 2019, which too I think should not have been entertained because the dramatists personally were actually mischievous in terms of who was representing. And the basis of those petitions could also have been gone into. But in any case, the Supreme Court only said, come out with a better structure for implementation so that these rules don't remain only symbolic in nature. That's all the Supreme Court said. There was never a move on the part of the Supreme Court or a nudge or a nod on the part of the Supreme Court to say, expand the scope of this or alter the definition. So when the 2025 draft regulations were presented by the government before the Honorable Supreme Court, those regulations were actually better, considering that it had at least 3 or 4 important salient features. One, prosecution for any kind of malicious complaints. Second, you also have adversarial evidence being led by both parties so that people can understand what is going on, who is right and who is wrong. And 3, better representation of all stakeholders on committees, as opposed to saying that only certain communities will have representation on those committees. What happened from 2025 to January 2026 is, I think, it's a mystery, but perhaps it's not a mystery, because it appears that the establishment has capitulated to the woke agenda and the casteist narrative being pushed by the other side, unfortunately so, when it should have been vigilant, because it has a direct impact on the productivity of campuses and their contribution to the government's initiatives towards an Atmanirbhar Bharat and nation building. Because if campuses become battlegrounds, and especially elite campuses such as IITs and IIMs, then you have had it. There is no way that you can compete with a China or with an America or anybody else on deep tech, AI or whatever technology, once you start making or you start contributing to fires on campuses. So I'm not going down the path of who they were trying to appease, but if they were trying to appease, it was problematic. If not, they were not vigilant. In either case, it's a problematic situation.
Well,